Viewpoints on the talk station, FM 107 AM 1240. As I bring on Mark, I've got a caller standing by. But first, let me just welcome Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row. And Mark, I'm going to get to details with you in a moment, but I want to get to Jim in Morehead City first.
Absolutely.
All right. And Jim in Morehead City, welcome to the program. And Mark, before you joined us, I brought up the topic of the apology tours and the fact that all these people have done some rather atrocious things in their lives. And by the way, one of them, Mark, and by the way, Jim, I don't know if this is what you're going to chat about, but womenless weddings, all that gender misappropriation. Jim, good evening to you. Thanks for joining us.
Is this the 107.1 confession line?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. And bear with me for a moment.
Dr. Phil will be on in just a minute.
Lockwood, I've been carrying baggage around for many, many years. And I need to get it off my chest, and I want to stay ahead of it so that it doesn't hurt me down the road when I run for public office, which I never will.
Well, you don't know, Jim. You may become presidential fodder here.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that a few years ago, don't if you know who I am, don't repeat this because I could get in big trouble.
Understood. I know. I got you.
I checked out of a 10-item line with 12 items in a grocery store.
Oh, God.
Now, on top of that transgression, just the other day, I was on the phone with a woman, and I referred to her as honey.
Oh.
And I need to bare my soul and take my punishment. And I asked her if she would please, I would accept service of any lawsuit she filed against me and would plead guilty in every count. I offered to settle it for money, but she didn't want money. She wanted to humiliate me.
Oh my God.
So I'm coming out with this, Lockwood, to get ahead of everything, and I feel better already.
Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate your call. And by the way, we're going to put a special extension on for the 107. I like that very much, Jim. I see an excellent idea.
Well, I'm glad. I feel so bad now, but I feel so much better now that I've gotten it off my chest. And thank you for taking my confession.
Thank you very much,
Jim.
Sharing. Thank you very much, Jim. Take care. All right, bye-bye.
John,
Mark, it's amazing. It is stunning. But what's better yet is that all the progressives and liberals are being hoisted on their own petard.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the governor's mansion right now in Virginia. I wouldn't want to be the attorney general, and I wouldn't want to be the lieutenant governor.
No.
Oh, by the way, now they say that Jimmy Kimmel appeared in blackface, and you just don't seem too much outcry about this when it happens to the Democrats. But more importantly, I think what's being swept under the rug is that the lieutenant governor of Virginia is having a Me Too movement, and nobody in the Democratic Party is talking about it. And the woman has come out,
right,
and she's very substantial.
Right.
And the other thing is that she has hired Christine Blasey's
attorney,
same law firm. Yes.
I know. And what's fascinating, I was listening to Tucker Carlson last night, and he pointed out the remarks by the disparity of remarks by Senator Cory Booker when the Senate Judiciary Committee was reviewing then candidate but now Justice Brett Kavanaugh on the accusations by Christine Blasey Ford. Am I correct? Blasey
correct.
Ford. Blasey Ford.
You have to have three names now.
That's correct. And AOC is a good example. But the point was that now his attitude is, well, this particular accusation we don't have time for. We've got to talk about other issues, particularly in the relationship to the governor. By the way,
where's the press on this? Where's the press on that? Where's the press on really? Just imagine if this was Pat McCrory.
Oh yeah,
he was governor of North Carolina when this transpired.
But and guilty as charged for having been around there.
They would have, they'd already packed him up. I mean, the 9 yards of it is that racism has no place in America. But to say that both parties, this wasn't even happening in '64, the 1960s, the '50s. This was happening in the '80s.
Right. No, absolutely. All right, Mark, before we go any further, we've got Steve, and I've got to check and see if he was calling on our line. Okay, it is.
On your helpline.
On the helpline. Let's go to Steve in Carteret County. Steve? Yes, sir.
Hey, Lockwood. I just want to know, how far do they want to take this blackface to county government? Do they want to take it to employees of state government? I know a person who had a picture, because I remember seeing it, and I was at the party where this gentleman who's an employee at a county level was blackface. And, should this guy be worried he's going to lose his job if that picture
Well, what I
comes
think
out?
it speaks to, though, Lockwood, is it speaks to the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party. I don't know how far the level will go, but this governor in Virginia is the same guy that railed about what happened in Charlottesville.
Exactly, and racism and the whole issue of the alt-right and what have you. No, Steve, that's a very good question. The other aspect I
think there's a bunch of people out there shaking in their boots right now from something they did back in the cocktail parties back in the 80s.
But I got a better one for you. Back when they were high schoolers on top of all of that.
Yeah,
by the way,
there's no telling
by the way,
out there.
By the way, I was talking to a campaign today, although I'm not involved in campaigns anymore.
Uh-huh.
And that, you do opposition research on the candidate that you have. So if something comes up, right? Now it's standard practice after Kavanaugh to look at your yearbook.
Absolutely. The other thing, and Steve, before I wrap it up with you, and thank you for the call, the question I have for you,
It doesn't have to be a yearbook. It could be a photograph of Joe Blow's party he had back in '82.
Well,
at his house.
This goes to the issue of Facebook and how we're using digital media now. But the question I have for you, Steve, is: did you ever attend or did you ever participate in a womanless wedding?
No.
Okay, because
I did participate in 1971 in a ugly man's contest.
Okay, but that I know who you are, so I won't. Well, I don't want to go any further than that. Thanks very much, Steve. Appreciate that.
The statute of limitations is up on that, isn't it?
I was real drunk at the time. All right, later.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate
that.
Isn't
the statute of limitations up on that?
Yeah, it is definitely. Mark, we got so many other things to talk about. This is a major story. It is significantly distracting, and what fascinates me about this, to Steve's point, how long will this continue? We've now got Senator Elizabeth Warren apologizing for her. And by the way, I shared this with the audience earlier. Her description of herself as an American Indian at a college, I think it was a college identification form of some nature.
It helped her get in college.
Yeah. But by the way, I don't know if you've ever paid attention to a website called the Babylon Bee, but they are the Onion derivative for, if you will, the Christian community. But the piece here is: Elizabeth Warren admits to wearing pale face at a college party.
Tongue in cheek, right?
Oh, absolutely. But this is the sort of thing that we've got. All this we've got. This is
well. Let me just make
extreme.
One comment about her, because she registered that way. They have the card that she filled out.
Right.
She has no credibility left. Now, I thought Ari Fleischer, I saw him today. He was a former press secretary to George W. Bush.
Mm-hmm.
Had an interesting point. All she really had to say is that she was told by her mother and grandmother she had Indian blood.
Right.
But the way she's done it, she's apologized. She's had a DNA test. She is actually, at this stage, pushing the story herself.
Good point. And basically, as one would say, continuing to dig the hole even deeper.
That's right. There's an old adage in politics: when the hole's getting deep, stop digging.
Right. Well, okay. Before we go to the break, the whole issue of identity politics, and this is an extension of that in many regards, that's my observation. my question, and to Steve's question as well, does this at a point demean future accusations, and particularly in the case of the lieutenant governor's challenges of sexual assault? Is this a situation where...
I found this woman to be very credible. I'd like to say that. I mean, she is a college professor.
Yep.
I think she's at Stanford. I could be wrong about that, but she's somewhere out in California.
Yep.
But you don't see the Pelosi's. You don't see the Kamala Harris.
Nope.
You don't see the senators up there with righteous indignation. They say, no, we have to focus on these other things now. Well, it's selective outrage is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the president may be right in this respect. The scandal that's going on there now, it's potentially all three gentlemen could have to resign. And then the Secretary of State, I think, is next.
Right.
He's a Republican. He could end up governor.
I know. And by the way, I was under the impression that maybe the Attorney General had resigned, but he has not resigned at this point.
No, he hasn't.
Okay.
And the truth is, where we are right now, is that you're guilty until proven innocent, particularly, though, if you're a conservative or a Republican.
Very good point. Real quickly, related to Virginia, Ralph Northam, of course, is the governor, and then we have Justin Fairfax as the lieutenant governor. Any anticipation at this point that either or both might, in fact, resign?
I think that Northam's trying to ride it out. He can't be impeached for this, is my understanding. So I think he's going to try to ride it out, which by doing that is severely going to handicap the Democratic Party in Virginia, in my view. And by the way, let me just say one other thing. To me, when you look at what's transpiring here, and I'm reiterating a couple points I made earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrats are just living a double standard, and the double standard doesn't apply. The standard doesn't apply when you're a Republican, and I think that's really bad for America. But Trump called it. He thinks that Virginia now, the president thinks, could become a red state in 2020.
That was the question I wanted to ask you. We'll take a quick break on that. We've got more to talk about here in just a moment with our guest, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, by the way. You can watch him as well as listen to him tomorrow evening on UNC-TV starting at 8:30 p.m., 9 o'clock shortly thereafter. As a matter of fact, 30 minutes after the 8:30 airing on the main channel, on the digital channel of WUNC, and then, of course, Saturday at 4 p.m., Sunday at 9:30 a.m., all on the digital channel, and then again Sunday, just to remind you, noon on WUNC-TV's main channel. That's Front Row with our guest, your host, Marc Rotterman, here on Viewpoints this evening on the talk station. If you have a comment, feel free to give us a call, 247-7282. That's 247-7282. Viewpoints on the talk station, FM 107 AM 1240. Our guest this afternoon, Marc Rotterman. We're going through the Facebook postings of him over the past 15 years to see if there are any embarrassing circumstances and so forth. Marc, you're in good luck.
If you wear sunglasses, it's hard to actually find out who you are.
Good point. Let's talk.
I recommend them.
Let's talk here for a moment. The fallout from the State of the Union address, and particularly, I've got to bring up the issue. The president bragged on the issue of, energy independence, the fact that this country is now a net exporter of energy rather than an importer, that we are actually helping the world. And now, of course, we've got various groups such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, as some people call her, who are now promoting the Green Deal.
It's the new Green Deal.
Uh-huh.
And you know, it's a socialist utopia in my view. I mean, what you have here is that she wants to limit air. So you fly on planes anymore. They want bullet trains. Only going to cost about $7 trillion, but she'll get $2 to $1 back. That's the way it'll work. It'll create millions of good, high-paying jobs. The goal is to achieve zero greenhouse gas emissions. It will secure clean air and water and healthy food. I mean,
okay, wait, Mark.
We need smart power grids now, and it's beyond the pale. Even Pelosi did not endorse this.
Well, I'm wondering, what universe are we talking about? Is it the same universe that you and I occupy, or is this an alternative?
Well, here's the troubling thing about this: by 2 to 1, Americans don't believe socialism is a good idea.
Right.
But I don't think what we're doing is teaching how in the schools the effects of socialism and what it has done to countries. I mean, if they really need an example, just look at Venezuela. But my point is that a lot of the millennials, and you talk to them,
right? I'm going to be talking to them.
That that we really there's a problem with climate change. Mm-hmm. This woman is saying actually because cows give out
flatulence. Yeah.
Yes. So that was good.
You
saved me there. But so we're going to have to get rid of cows.
This is.
This is what she said. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up, and yet she has a platform. I have a couple conservative friends that are going to they're pretty high rollers in the conservative movement, and their names you would recognize.
Right.
And I've suggested to them at CPAC, challenge her to a debate on socialism versus capitalism. Because I think it would be, not even do it on CNN, because it would be very obvious to the American people that there's real no depth there with Ocasio-Cortez.
But here's the kicker. She represents a new face in Washington, D.C., and I'm wondering if this is going to gain momentum. Maybe not right now, but as we see an expansion of, the younger voters, is there a possibility that some of her proposals actually make it into law?
No, because we still have a Republican Senate. That's the backstop right now.
For the moment.
For the moment, I will tell you, first of all, I think Donald Trump is going to get reelected with this current crop that we have, of Democrats running. The second thing is that I think the person who would give him the best run for his money would probably be Joe Biden, the former vice president under Barack Obama. However, he may be too much of a centrist to win in a primary.
Okay, what about the Democrat leadership right now in Washington, D.C.? Do they see this as a potential? I mean, the examples we articulated earlier in Virginia, the charges now of infant murder as a result of New York and Virginia. The Virginia law is not the Virginia.
And by the way, the leadership of the Democratic Party is downplaying that. I mean, how far can you go? When a baby's out of the womb, and then you're going to decide, we're going to terminate that life. It's beyond the pale to me where we have moved to placate the pro-abortion crowd. Frankly,
well, we're seeing this again. The failure of the Democrat Party to grasp some of the responsibilities that it has been challenging other individuals, particularly Republicans, but libertarians as well. Now, all of a sudden, we've got the situation in Virginia. We've got the topics associated with abortion, as we talked about earlier. And we now have someone who's actually promoting socialism. To give credit.
Well, beyond that, they're the policies of the Democratic Party now.
Uh-huh.
And the politics of investigations, which they're now calling everybody. Adam Schiff is reopening the Russia investigation when, frankly, the Pfizer warrant was bogus in the first place. We now know that. Mueller knew it. they knew, and this guy Orr, who was the FBI agent, was telling Mueller and these people, hey, guess what? This guy that's a British agent is anti-Trump. This is a biased thing, and nobody listened. And so from day one, they've tried to get rid of Donald Trump. Now they want to look into all his business activities. And at a certain point, he just needs to say, hey, it's over. I'm not talking to you. And, you know, this executive, whatever they want to do, just stalemate them, stonewall, or whatever. I thought the speech, and we discussed it earlier in the week, actually yesterday, was a very reasonable speech that the president made.
Before we go to the break, a quick question. We're going to move to North Carolina politics here in a moment. Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, with us this evening. Of course, you can watch and listen to him tomorrow evening at 8:30 on UNC-TV's program, and then on their digital station or digital signal as well at 9 o'clock tomorrow evening and other times during the weekend, as a matter of fact. Mark, is it possible for the Democrat Party to maintain, and I air quotes here, the high ground with all the embarrassments we've seen in the past 4 weeks?
Well, I would say to you, since Obama, and frankly the Clintons, they've been taking the low road. I think the problem for Republicans is that they view politics as a management problem, and Democrats view it as scorched earth.
Good point.
And when you're dealing with that, and you want to have the courtesy of the House and the Senate and all that, they don't play by those rules. They're not really concerned as much about philosophy as they are about power.
Our guest this afternoon, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, tomorrow evening, 8:30 p.m. on WUNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, and other times during the weekend, which I will share with you and remind you about here in just a few moments. Mark, I want to turn to the issue of North Carolina politics and a recent op-ed authored by Robert Pittenger, the failed Republican candidate in North Carolina District 9. The district that's under contest right now as a result of, questionable actions related to absentee ballots. Stay with us here on Viewpoints. I'm looking forward to getting Mark's observations about what is behind former Congressman Pittenger's remarks. Stay with us here on Viewpoints. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. I'm looking forward to the Y Factor. We'll bring up the topic of socialism, Mark. Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, with us this evening, and we'll find out here in a few moments what's on tap to tomorrow's program on Front Row, as seen on WUNC-TV at 8:30 p.m. and then 9 o'clock on the digital channel. And just in case you should miss those two times, 4 o'clock p.m., that's 4 p.m. on Saturday, 9:30 a.m. on Sunday, on the digital channel, WUNC, and at noon on the main channel, that's noon Sunday, WUNC-TV's Front Row. Mark, earlier this week, I was stunned to read an op-ed authored by former Congressman Robert Pittenger, who lost in a primary to the Reverend Mark Harris in the 9th Congressional District that's down in Mecklenburg and Bladen and those areas of, I'm trying to think, Bladen County, and I'm forgetting the other counties right now. And in the op-ed, he accused Representative Mark Meadows of being the one who basically resulted in the wall not being built. That was a stunning argument.
And the $25 billion, which, by the way, now, for the wall, which, by the way, now I hear the Democrats are going to come up with a, quote, compromise, and I'll bet the Republican moderates that are on this conference committee are going to sign off on $1.3 billion. It's ridiculous, really.
Okay. But why in the world would former Representative Pittenger tackle Mark Meadows, who, by the way, is chairman of the Freedom Caucus?
Well, there are two reasons. One, Mark Meadows represents ending the swamp. Two, he supported Mark Harris, not
Robert Pittenger.
Not Robert Pittenger.
Okay.
But beyond that, I think it's what we're going to see in the next 2 to 4 years, and actually in 2020, is a power struggle struggle for the heart and soul of the Republican Party in North Carolina, because I think that Meadows represents the new Republican Party. I think we have a lot of people, and I won't call out names here. I think your listeners can understand or pretty much synopsize for themselves that there's a lot of guys that play and women that play the inside up there. And they're really kind of status quo folks, and they've been up there 10, 20 years now.
But here's the kicker. What's to be gained by tearing down really a highly recognized, nationally recognized...
Well, I mean, again, it's sour grapes on his part because... and by the way, I don't believe Robert Pittenger ever wrote that.
Okay.
But and maybe he did. That might be too much of a slight. But I will say, okay, it's because he was defeated. Now, of course, as you well know, we have that 9th district. The Board of Elections is calling that into question, try to rule whether he has enough votes to win. My guess is, even if they ruled at the state board that Steny Hoyer would not seat him, who's the majority leader in the House, and we're going to get a special election in the 9th congressional district sometime in August, September.
Okay, this is. I wonder what impact this has on the state Republican campaign, the state Republican Party.
Well, they stood up for him. Robin Hayes did, and Dallas Woodhouse in a tweet. They stood up for Meadows. Let me just say this, okay? I never think that either party, it serves the Democrat or Republican Party for other members of Congress to take shots at each other.
Agreed fully.
I mean, and you don't see that much with the Democrats because they have, candidly, they have better discipline.
Well,
I mean, you look at the shots that John McCain took at the President of the United States. And by the way, just because he didn't like Trump and because of the comments about his service, he gave a thumbs down when we had a chance to kill Obamacare.
Okay, is this a situation where Republicans, let's look at this from the perspective of Republicans, are independent thinkers, whereas Democrats are basically in lockstep with some significant force, with some overriding power? I mean,
I find that Republicans, particularly when they go on TV and when they're in Washington, they want to be loved by the Georgetown elite. They want to be loved by the Washington Post. They want to, quote, be mavericks. They want to be, quote, independent thinkers.
Okay.
And guess what? That's not why they were sent up there.
You know, I've got to say this, and I think I saw the president, we're talking President Donald Trump, during the State of the Union address, speaking of mavericks, do a thumbs up to, I think it was Senator Joe Manchin when he was talking about energy independence and being a net producer of energy, because, of course, Senator Manchin has done, worked hard to protect his state's one of his primary revenue sources, which is coal.
Correct. And by the way, it was one of the worst primary performances and self-inflicted wounds I've ever seen was when Hillary went to West Virginia and pretty much said coal was dead.
Right. That's a good point. But we look at the Democrats that have chosen to be conservative. I'm thinking Joe Lieberman. I'm thinking again here Senator Joe Manchin. What happens to their careers when they do something of this nature? Because the Republicans, it seems, these Republicans just seem to fracture.
Well, you know what I think that Manchin ought to do, frankly?
I'd change parties. And I think the Republicans would, embrace him fully.
Well, I mentioned it to several. I said one of the key things that you ought to try to do from the Trump White House is switch him right after the election.
Well, maybe at some point they will. All right, we're going to wrap it up with you, Marc Rotterman, with us this evening. And Mark, I'm curious as to what will be the topics tomorrow evening on Front Row.
Well, we'll be talking about the new Green Deal, the latest from the General Assembly, a new report on teacher retention in North Carolina, and we'll be talking about a report that Nick Oxner did from WBTV on 80,000 driver's licenses being lost in the system at DMV.
How many drivers?
80,000.
And of course here they're talking about moving the DMV from Raleigh to Rocky Mount.
They need to privatize the DMV as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that and maybe possibly even the ABC system as well.
That would be good.
Now my question for you, Mark: Who will be your guest?
We have Mitch Kokai of the John Locke Foundation, Donna King with WBTV. We'll have Loretta Beniti, host of In Focus on Spectrum News. And did I mention Donna King and Nick Oxner?
Oh, Nick Oxner. Okay. And this is tomorrow evening, by the way, for those who are listening to the program. Marc Rotterman, you can watch him as well as listen to him on the program Front Row, as seen on WNC-TV starting at 8:30 a.m. I'm sorry, 8:30 p.m. I apologize. Well, maybe you should start doing a morning program as well, Mark. 8:30 p.m. tomorrow evening on WNC-TV, 9 o'clock. That's 30 minutes later on the digital channel of WNC-TV. And then Saturday, 4 p.m., Sunday, 9:30 a.m., all on digital channel. And then again, noon on Sunday on the main channel, WUNC-TV.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Always a pleasure having you, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row. Stay tuned for more here. The Y Factor just around the corner.